Basketball has its sixth man, the unsung hero who comes off the bench to help his team to victory. Football has its 12th man, an unseen but powerful energy that urges the home team forward. Now, Christianity has its 13th apostle, a faithful witness to the love, mercy, and truth of Jesus Christ. How about you? Will you be the 13th apostle?
To take or not to take. To borrow William Shakespeare's, some of his words. The vaccine episode. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the 13th Apostle, where we explore the good, the beautiful, and the true of the Catholic faith and the Catholic Church. And we encourage each other to be that 13th Apostle. How you doing, Dan? Duddy?
Good, Tom.
That's good.
How are you?
I'm all right. Got my my mascot here again, my daughter's cat, Luna, or as we often call her, Looney, for very good reason. But she's sleeping, so I don't think she'll be a challenge in any way. Unlike this vaccine topic. So I was reading an article. I finished reading the article, and I sent you a message about the vaccine, and you gave me a terse 2-word response, which is a response that we can share in public. It doesn't reflect badly on you. Maybe some of your 2-word responses on the football field, they might. When
move along, Tom. Move along.
When the ref calls something against your team, which you feel unjustly accused.
The refs are never right, so it's not when. It's any call's wrong.
That's right. Oh gosh. So you said from abortions, and that was it. So I inferred from that reply that it was like a door slamming in my face. Not as in an offense to me, just the door was slammed shut in the face of that topic. And so naturally, when somebody does that piques my curiosity, and then I want to explore. I want to go down that road and find out. A strongly held position is usually of interest, because so often we don't hear, we don't read about strongly held positions. There's usually some wiggle room here, that, or whatnot. Yours was not. So we agreed to do the episode, and maybe two. So the coronavirus, the COVID-19 vaccine is out now. It's, by the time people hear this episode, it'll have been out for close to a week. In the U.S. So so it's a big deal, and there's a lot of, naturally, with people and vaccines in the past probably 15, 20 years, there's so much conspiracy theories put out about vaccines. And so I want to talk about it. We're going to talk about it much more from a moral standpoint, obviously with the nature of our program. So, and I know that people wrestle with this, and, they can have good reasons for wrestling with whether or not to take the vaccine. And as Catholics, what your response is usually, I'll say more traditional or fundamental Catholics. I would say that's the concern, that we can't take the vaccine because they're linked with abortion. So you have the floor, Coach.
Yeah, so I did slam the door on your question. I did it with a fervor. I was strong about it when you said, "Will I take the vaccine?" And my answer was, from abortions. Period. Done. So it was a mouthful put into 2 words. Actually, more than a mouthful. Really, decades of thinking. And I think we're not alive as men unless we take a stand on something, and something that we're actually willing to die for. But it would be horrible to die for something that was based on wrong assumptions.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think we really have to make sure that, if there is a greater good than this, well, for the sake of the greater good, then we absolutely have to maybe take ourselves out of the picture for a minute and take a deep breath and really search through, the history of whatever it is. And in this case, we're talking about abortions and stem cells for research. Yeah, to take a breath and then go out and seek resources. And so I did. I did just that, and I did it really for the intentions of supporting the way I felt at the moment. I was living in this kind of this blurry vision that, everything that comes out of the medical world in modern times has come from abortions, thousands of abortions, is the way my creative thinking was taking me. It's not something I think about every day, but of course now we're in an urgent situation with vaccines. So there's a lot of complications that make us nervous. But as a devoted Catholic man, that has come to the forefront. What the derivation of this is, where is it derived from? And I did some research, and I went to a boots on the ground friend of the family. Her name is Jackie. She's a doctor, and she's a devout Catholic, and we discussed it. And
she is a medical doctor, Dan?
She's a medical doctor. Works in a hospital, and she's with COVID patients every day, all day. So she's in the thick of it. She's front line. If you want to know about the war and what's going on in the war, you go to the people that are in the trenches. And she's in the trenches. And once again, having her as a resource, being a devout Catholic, was meaningful to me. And she explained some things to me that I easily could have found if I brought myself to it, myself personally, and did some some work on my computer and dug in. That these there were 3 babies aborted in the late 60s and 2 in the early 70s. And I don't have all the facts, and we don't have enough time for all that anyway. I'm here to give a little personal witness more than anything. And that those babies were not aborted for the purposes of scientific research. They were aborted for reasons that were personal to their mothers at the time. And we know how we feel. I'm adamantly opposed to abortion. Jackie brought up a point, okay, so a sin was committed, and could it be possible that a doctor says we're going to make something good from this baby, and then in fact did. And, it reminded me of my son Francis, who was killed in a car accident. He was a passenger to a drunk driver, and they hit an oak tree. Now, we had immediately been contacted by a vision center. Can we have Francis's eyes to give someone else eyesight? And they said, well, of course we would. So if the driver had purposely run into that oak tree to kill my son purposely, would I have still taken those eyes and allowed those eyes to go to a child so they can see? The answer is yes. So it goes back to the abortion. That baby was purposely aborted. So is it okay for the doctor then to take those stem cells and then, do what the doctors do for that to help save lives? And in hindsight, and after looking at that and after talking to Jackie, boots on the ground, I say yes.
Well, hold on now.
I said, yeah.
You say the doctor to take the... If you're saying the abortion, the doctor who performed the abortion can take...
No.
Okay.
No.
I want to make sure, because you didn't... I want to make sure you clarify that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And, we're always in the beginning stages, Tom, as men and women. Always in the beginning stages, if we allow ourselves to step back and take a deep breath and re-examine our convictions. So, yeah, I mean, that case what you just brought up, those are defining questions. And in my conversation with Jackie, and I implore our people, our audience, to do the same, is that go to the facts, Jackie said. She has a mentor that expresses to her. Go to the facts, find the facts, and then what's left are questions. And they can be personal questions to formulate opinions. And then of course, our faith rides in throughout, over and above and underneath all that. So we need to go to the facts.
All right. Well, let me jump in and say, in terms of the facts, what we're really talking about, especially I'm sure as the doctor meant it, is based on science. But it's also important to know that science is always unfolding. So we always, people get frustrated because they'll hear that coffee's no good for them. And then a year later, there's a new study or 2 new studies, coffee is good for you. and then another year there's more information, this and that. So science is always programmed. Now sometimes you do get pretty definitive statements, but that doesn't mean the research ever ends on that. But we can say in terms of a fact that the abortion, the willful, intentional abortion, for convenience, certainly for convenience sake, that's wrong. And it would be like Dr. Frankenstein if the abortionist were to then harvest, to do what they do in China, for example, to harvest organs. So that's an evil, because our faith teaches that you can't do an evil to get a good. But our faith also teaches that, and that's where the concept of complicity, if you did the evil act and then you're going to benefit from that, well, you are morally complicit in that, right? And you're formally complicit is the technical term, right? So you did that wrong, and you're trying to, and then so you could get a good out of it. That's not, we can't do that. But we can do, as you said, we can find, if the evil's been done and we weren't part of that evil, or we weren't knowingly part of that evil, then we should try to find a good out of that. So if you're now, so the audience is probably wondering, and I'm in the audience now because I'm listening to you. Have you changed your opinion?
I have changed my opinion, but it's an evolution. It wasn't like I opened that door and said, "Okay." I did slam the door and I said, "From abortions," but I'm not opening that door and I'm saying, "Yeah, okay." It's still evolving in my head. I still have time for that, and I think as humans we need to always let things evolve without compromise. Take it slowly and do the same. I also believe that, being the fact that these were 3 aborted babies, and there's no evidence that anything happened since those 3 aborted babies that went toward vaccines. The cell lines from these babies are being utilized, and some of these vaccines that are coming at us through COVID, I think there are five different versions or companies that are offering them. Two of those are only testing the man-made vaccines, synthetic vaccines. I'm not great at these terms. They're only being tested by the cell lines, whereas the other 3 are directly coming from the original work in the abortions, which makes them a little bit bioethically compromised, in my estimation. So, it's not like, okay, so now let's start hitting oak trees so that kids get sight. And in the case of abortion, it's not like let's keep going to aborted babies and let's see what else we can work from this. That's not the case, and I was pleased to know that too, Tom, because I felt that this was happening rampantly, that babies were being aborted, not necessarily for the intentions of the medical world, but doctors who might be more lenient toward abortions. We have way too many that are more than lenient toward abortions, but more lenient toward abortions because they're saving lives elsewhere, rather than making a stand against abortions. You get my point? So I was pleased, although disgusted, to hear that it was just the 3 babies that these medical enhancements, I can't believe I'm saying this, but have come from. Yeah.
That is a mouthful, pleased but disgusted, because so much, so often good, even if it's many times it's inadvertent, new seeds. Obviously Christ tells us, unless a grain of wheat fall to the ground and die, and dies to allow new seeds to come forth. Those new seeds wouldn't come forth if that didn't fall to the ground and die.
Yeah.
So it's just that what he didn't say. Well, let's assume nobody came off with evil in their mind along and found that tree and just hacked off that limb, and so that seed could fall to the ground and die. I'm sure implicit in what Christ said is that nature was taking its course. There was no will involved in that seed falling to the ground, but that seed has to ultimately, in order to get new seeds and new growth, that seed. So many, you see new trees, forests growing from after forest fires because the seeds have been cracked open by the flames, by the heat, and then new come forth. But again, there's no will in that. And some people could say, and this is certainly, there's evils of the physical world, the natural world. I mean, in paradise, in the Garden of Eden, there's nothing recorded about earthquakes or volcanoes or anything like that. So people would say, well, that's nature. Well, it's nature after the fall. So there are evils of the physical world, and then there's evils of humanity, which involves will.
Yeah.
So, but I don't. If you think about it, it's almost impossible. I don't know. I don't know if we would just be able to stand naked in the public square and not do anything, because every bit of clothing, let's say, and coffee being the big thing now is where are things sourced? Because for decades, maybe centuries, we'll just say a long, long time, people have benefited from evils at different parts of the world, let's say, or different parts of our world. The sweatshops in New York, where the seamstresses in that horrible fire. I think that was in New York, but anyway, you can look that up, and it's just a horrible, horrible thing. But again, okay, so a terrible thing happens, and people were complicit in that. But new laws were developed, right? But if you wore the clothing from that company, or if you wear some of the clothing you have on now, that perhaps they came from China, terrible sweatshops, people committing suicide in China because the horrible working conditions. There were stories about that with various cell phone makers in recent years. So, and the taxes you pay go to evil things.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be as pure as a driven snow, you're not going to make it, because you're not going to be able to wear anything. You're going to be able to eat anything. For the most part, it's you trace it back. If you're wearing cotton clothing, how far back can you trace that to the plantations in the South?
Yeah, and it's no joke, and there's nothing more real to us who have been blessed with faith, the gift of faith, that what's extremely prevalent in our lives, that we're surrounded by evil, and that this world was given to Satan, for him to have. And so, those examples that you're just using really are a great revelation that we need to not compromise, but know that we are surrounded by evil. And in the case of the 3 aborted babies, good, can we say that good came from it, Tom? Can we say that good came from that? Well, I think we can.
Of course.
The vaccines have saved lives. And, there's a definition of humility that we like to use in the Catholic Athletes of Christ. It's very fundamental. The humility is the virtue of being aware that God is the author of all good, and the realization that we are not God. So we can say that in looking back and really thinking about this and praying on it, that it's quite miraculous that so much life has come from that horrible sin of those 3 abortions.
Well, I think we could have another episode, though, because you just said God is the author of all good. So if a person does an evil and then does it, so if he kills that person, but he harvests that person's liver and gives it to a person who's dying.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, I just say God is the author of all good.
That's for another episode. That's for me. It's getting on my knees for 7 days straight. Think about that one. But that's not what I'm saying at all. That's going to require some thought. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
go ahead.
Yeah.
No. I'm talking about the tragedy of the murder of an abortion that a mother has to face up to Christ with, and a doctor stepping in and saying, a different doctor stepping in and saying, I'm going to make something good of this. I don't know the facts. I don't know if the doctor that aborted the baby had a complete change of heart and said, oh my God, it just smacked me right between the eyes. How horrible this is. I just committed a murder. Now I'm going to redeem myself and make good on this and make sure that we get a vaccine that saves lives from this. I don't know what happened at the case. Only God knows what was in the hearts of those people at the time. So
we can only judge them. We can only judge them by what they've done. Well,
judge is the tricky word, though, and that's where I was going to go to. By not taking the vaccine, we have to be careful that we're not being controlled by pride and being judgmental of whatever happened, and us not knowing what the intentions were, what the hearts of the people were at the time that it happened. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. The judgment part, Catholics always get hung up by the, judge, judgment, judgmental. And, when you look at the original languages, obviously we were given the powers of judgment. But of course, Christ is not saying judgment from the standpoint of you have the power to condemn.
Right.
You have the power to, thumb up or thumb down. It's just, okay, you use your rational brain that God gave you, and what you have this information. If you believe something, but there's no evidence to support that belief, you might have a hunch, you might perceive something, and I'm not saying it's not valid. But the odds are then you're involved in conspiracy, because you have the facts that are out there, and the facts go heavily in one direction, but you believe that they're in another. You believe they're going in the other direction. Then that's pretty much a conspiracy. That's a tough way to live. And then, of course, that means you don't have any trust. So it's how to help those in the audience. It's because we always want to be careful. We want to seem like we're giving a green light to something that's sketchy. And you implied that by saying that you were going to continue to evaluate it. Of course, the challenge in life is when time is involved. And let's say the COVID vaccine train is coming by your town, is making a stop there tomorrow, and you're not ready. You needed another week. In your mind, you need another week or two to come to your decision. But the next time that train's coming back might be a year from then, and you could be dead because you didn't take the vaccine. And let's say you caught the virus. So, and was that a good to your family that you died? No. What's the greater good? I mean, do Catholic moral theology and the social teaching of the church, Catholic social teaching, is what are you doing? What do your actions do to those around you? Mm-hmm. So, and that's known as the common good, the principle of the common good. Mm-hmm. So, from our church documents, the Congregation, the Doctrine of the Faith, the common good is understood as the social conditions that allow people to reach their full human potential and to realize their human dignity. Of course, to realize your human dignity, first of all, is a mental thing, because you realize I'm a child of God. I'm made in the image and likeness of God. So, with that in mind, you have to. It's respect of the person, respect of the other, and if you don't take a vaccine that has been approved, obviously, if we have a vaccine that's been approved. But what happens if you get sick, or if you don't wear a mask and you get sick, or for some reason you have it but you don't have any symptoms, and you make somebody else sick, and you make others sick?
Yeah, that's the biggest part. Yeah.
So that's the thing. I mean, I'm sure nobody likes wearing a mask. I don't like wearing a mask. There's other problems as a result of mask wearing. Dermatologists reporting explosions of and ophthalmologists explosions of eye problems because of the expirations from our exhales are being trapped and maintained on our face and then going up into our eyes. So nobody likes to wear the mask, but I think the difficulty for some is that, especially if you're Catholic and you believe, with good evidence, by the way, in my opinion, that the church has acted poorly in certain times of this COVID, in response to the COVID. They've acted in weakness, I believe. But we've talked about that in a couple of episodes at least. You feel like you want to take a stand and say, no, I'm not going to do that. But then you get into that pride word, which you had mentioned before. So if you didn't want to wear a mask, well, how do you eat then? And you and I were talking about this before we went on the air. How do you eat? Because you got to get it, and stores require masks. Well, somebody else buying the food for you? Is that are you complicit then because you're participating in that good from the person doing the wrong thing, in your opinion? If you forswear against wearing a mask. So I think whether it's masks or whether it's the vaccine, there's a lot to question about the way our governments handle it and the citizens handle it and the churches handle it. But as always, we go with the preponderance of evidence. 20 seconds.
Go to the Catholic News Service, everyone. I implore you, go to an early December article from the Catholic News Service. This was shared to me by Jackie, and I just found it to be very revealing. It's for the common man to read, and just really, really helped me an awful lot in my ever-evolving decision-making toward this. God bless you all. This was a great talk, and we should probably do a part 2 and dig into this a little bit more.
Okay, buddy. All right, yes, God bless all. God bless you, buddy. And carry on with a beautiful Advent.
Yep, stay tuned for the next show with Peter and Jemmy. It's called Your Prayer Intentions, and the Angelus precedes that.
And remember, this is the season of giving. WQPHradio.org. Please give. These are great programs. They do a great service.
Thank you for listening to The 13th Apostle with Dan Duddy and Tom Caffrey. For more information on Dan, visit his website at www.danduddy.com or email dcduddy@gmail.com. Tom's website is faithpilgrims.com or email trcaffrey@faithpilgrims.com. How about you? Will you be the 13th Apostle?